is Jimmy Bartel. Matthew Lloyd.
You're right, Ed. It's a massive game for these two clubs. It's just a must-win for both Brisbane and Collingwood. And Brisbane have been off Broadway the last couple of weeks because they've had the bye last weekend, but they're not playing good football. And, Jimmy, we want to take a look at where they aren't going well, and that's around their midfield area where they've dropped significantly.
I feel like the last couple of times we've done Brisbane and we've shown the opposition, it's been the spread from the midfield. They've been left at the contest, and I think it's playing out in the two middle quarters here as well, Lloydie. You look, first quarter, they start really well. Everyone's running across the top of the ground. As the game wears on, the opposition starts to spin numbers through the midfield. We've shown a number of highlights, and they're getting absolutely lit up in the middle here. And then when the panic comes, all right, we better get on our bike and actually start generating some run and carry. But clearance differential, scores from clearance, as we've seen time and time again. Ball leaves the area, Brisbane's still stuck there.
And we all love to look really deep into footy, but it's no different at the highest level to the lowest level. If you get outworked and you get out-muscled, you're asking for trouble. So here's Connor McKenna. He's off to the races when the ball's in dispute. You're going to be punished. So when that ball is in dispute, he's gone. You know who his man was? Frederick. So Frederick's off having a shot for goal. That's not accountable footy. This is Robertson up against Sarong, who got 46 possessions. He's just not strong enough. He's in an awful position. He gets pushed off the contest. They've got to harden up. They've got to toughen up the Brisbane Lions to get their season back on track. We've shown this a number of times, Jim. Once the ball leaves the stoppage, you could throw a blanket over the Brisbane Lions. They're not working as hard as their opposition. So Carlton got them in round one after half-time, and Fremantle smashed them as well.
It's the initial contest and it's jogging away from it. You watch as the ball leaves, first two after it, but then that's just a fumble or off the leg there. The next person after it is Freo, and that they just need a bit more energy and zip throughout the game, not just when it starts and when you're a number of goals down.
This time last week, Eddie, you mentioned, the issue down at Collingwood is they just cannot hit a target. They cannot hit a target, and we'll have a look at some of how poor they were again last week.
Yeah, well, this brings up the conversation that I know, Lloydie, you've raised a number of times. Does Nick Dacos need to go to the half-back flank? Because we have a look at a number of the ball use here. This is where they're getting absolutely torched, Collingwood. 70 points twice already this year from turnovers, and it's all coming from this part across half-back here. The opposition's pressing up, they're putting pressure on the ball users, cutting out the releases, and that's where you want to turn the footy over against any side, but especially Collingwood. So if you've got a weapon like Nick, I know he's a superstar in the midfield, but this is what good can come, having him behind the ball. You don't need to do it all game, but he can actually just create and give some drive, and then we see the Collingwood that got them to a premiership. He actually overlaps really well through the midfield anyway. It's just a bit of class and polish when you need it at the moment.
Yeah, I think Craig McRae will make some tactical moves, and I think this should be one of them. I think he trained with the backs throughout the week, and speaking of backs, I think this was where their weapon started. I think their run and carry was off half-back. Quaynor hasn't been anywhere near his best. Maynard's been off. Johnny Noble comes in for Oleg Markov, and they're up against a star-studded forward 50, and they've been beaten, these smalls, in the first couple of rounds. I think Brent Daniels, we're going to look at him shortly, but Jack Higgins kicked 4. And also, obviously, Brent Daniels kicked 4 in round 1.
Yeah, it's going to go a long way to winning the game, but this is how crafty the opposition are. They want the ball to come to ground. They're getting out the back, which is unusual for Collingwood, who play a pretty proactive defence, but because the ball's coming through too easily against them, it's very hard for them to get proactive. So a bit of polish coming out of their back line. We're actually allowed their backs to get set and stop against goals, which the Giants were able to do them against them in opening round.
This is all attitudinal for me, for Collingwood as well. They've got to get nastier. Like, there's not enough touch from the talls or the smalls. And lastly, for Collingwood, their team defence was as good as any sides in the competition last year. We could have shown countless clips of this, but they're just being opened up far too much. They're reactionary. They're not proactive. They're not manning the mark as hard as they were, and teams are just opening them up, and it's leaving defenders cold. Quaynor's got his back to the play there. You're in trouble. That's causing nervousness, so this should be a mark, but he spoils it. It's probably why he's been managed out of the team this week, because he's been nervous in defence and they get beaten yet again. So I think they'll go up there with a point to prove, but at the Gabba, very difficult to win. I'm going to tip the Brisbane Lions.
Lions by under a goal.
Yeah.
Lions for me too, Ed.
Ed, have you still got belief?
Oh, of course I have.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, kick straight the first round, they probably win.
Oh, no.
Don't get 75 free kicks against them last week. Goals from the 10th row in the stand. Even Wayne Harms was closer to being than that one. Jeez. Go Pies.
North Smith medal, Brownlow medal is and Jimmy Bartel.
Good Friday for North is like their grand final. It's their biggest game of the year, and they take on the Carlton Football Club in a twilight game on Good Friday. And Alistair Clarkson, he spoke about where North are currently at, not being able to play out games. Here's Clarko.
There was evidence that we did enough to suggest that we're on the right track, but, obviously disappointed that you get teased, don't you? You think, geez, if we do that for the whole 4 quarters, we're going to win. But our challenge is just how can we do it for the whole 4 quarters, and we just couldn't quite get that done today.
So that's where they're at, Jimmy. They've just got to play harder for longer, but this was their best last week.
This is some of the evidence that Clarko's talking about. Brilliant. Rip the ball up through the middle. Take what's in front of you. So you don't have to do anything sexy. Here's the free one. Just hit it, and that's how you get scores inside forward 50. Take the free one, move the ball on quickly, use your teammates around you. Fight the tackle, really good work. Wardlaw, just use your teammates. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just use your teammates, run and support, take the easy one. Wardlaw finds a nice kick. There's about 3 Kangaroos here who could have received that one.
What do you think? It's fitness, just too inexperienced? Why? Because then the bad is pretty bad and they couldn't stop the runner. Yeah,
I think a bit of that, Lloydie, and they're coming from a long way back. So the big room for improvement is fitness. Concentration is a big one. When you can't impact the game offensively, you've got to impact it defensively. So come up, stick tackles. Look at the Giants coming through the middle. At the moment, the Kangaroos, the opposition, 60% of the time they go inside forward 50, they score. So that's just a transition, a decision-making thing. When you can't impact when you're attacking, where's the best place to defend?
Jimmy, Adam Sard's moved to his 3rd club, searching for what he wants within a football club, and you've been impressed with his form.
Yeah, I love his form, especially the back half of last year and the first couple of rounds. We know Sardi can do this. This is Sardi at the Gold Coast. He just runs, carries. He's impossible to tackle because of the speed, the sidestep and the long kick. But what I love is he does both. You use the basketball term, both sides of the ball. He's often the last line defender. Look at his closing speed here, cutting it out. That's not pretty, doesn't probably pop up too much, but it gives him a scoring opportunity. Cuts off the leads really well. He's hard to beat one-on-one defensively, and then he can still join in the attack. I think he's been one of the big improvers in the back half of last year and starting Carlton this year.
The game's going past big lumbering ruckman, and that's where Tristan Xerri has to keep developing himself as a player. Luke Jackson last week played one of the great games in recent times for a ruckman. It's his athleticism which really troubled Xerri around the ground. He took speckies, he kicked goals, and the big problem for Xerri is he's coming up against De Koning. Tom De Koning this week, who also, to me, is very close to having that massive game, Jimmy.
I know he's not Adam Goods, but he's a player who gets involved around the ground. Once the ball hits the ground, we saw in a couple of these edits, he's getting handball receives. Now, it's not often you give it to a ruckman. The old rule is don't give it to the ruckman, just bypass him. But he gets involved in the attack. He joins in. He's always live, and we know how good he is launching at the footy, marking it.
Yeah, so we're about to see some of the vision of De Koning, and I think he's just only scratched the surface of what he's capable of, De Koning. He's just a super player. Keep going with Luke Jackson here.
I know
he's got a lot of highlights, but just keeps going with De Koning, so I don't even bother with De Koning, I don't think. But he's one that Tristan Xerri has got a real bit of trouble on his hands.
Well, here's your De Koning highlights. And the thing I love about it, Lloyd, he's willing to push forward in general play. He just doesn't want to sit out, form the wall. Where he sees an opportunity, he can get forward, just work a little bit on his conversion. It's still a bit awkward at the moment, but he's providing a target because everyone's going to be drawn to Curnow and Mackay. If he's standing 30 metres out, he's likely to grab it
and
for
squeeze Pitnet out of the team with the way he's playing. Jimmy, who do you, Carlton easily?
I think Carlton will be pulling away at the end.
Saturday also is Essendon and the St Kilda Footy Club. This is going to be a tough game, and I loved what the Bombers did last week. It's razzed the whole competition up, and here is Isaac Heaney and Tom Papley speaking about the Essendon edge.
Oh, you could see it early, absolutely. And how long were they going to go for? That was what we put up, and they're physical and they had a crack, and we obviously ran over the top of them, which was nice. So not much love there.
Well, we all love the footy, love being tough, but you got to do it 4 quarters.
Well, Paps talked about 4 quarters, and we mentioned Kangaroos' room for improvement. This is the big room for improvement for the Bombers. Red time points against 53 points, ranked 18th. So the last 5 minutes of quarters, you've got to maintain that intensity. If you can't do it, you've got to look at your rotations to keep speed on the game, Lloyd. And this stat jumped out at you.
This is 19 times in 2 rounds. The opposition's gone from the back 50 to the forward 50 to score. And that is the 3rd worst since this stat has been taken since 2013. So damning in terms of their team defence.
And this is where the problem or an opportunity for them to improve is against the Saints. The Saints have shown us earlier they're not just a defensive side this year. They have some serious attacking flair off the back of it. This is the man, Wanganeen Malera, who's the hottest property in footy at the moment. He's on the opposite half-back flank. The Saints, their speed and ability to whip it out of the back 50, as you touched on. Essendon's got to be better at defending this because the ball comes and eventually ends up with Bonner, who thumps it long to an outnumber. But this is speed of ball movement. This is everyone constantly moving. The guys on the outside, this is unrewarded running, but it opens up the ground. You see the Saints. And the Saints are going to need to do that this week. No Max King. You need to get the ball in quicker. This is a positive. You can hem them in one side. You'd rather this happening, Essendon, because it's slow. It gives you defence to come an opportunity to block it up and at least get your ruck down the line, Lloyd.
Yeah, so this was one that, as I said, you just got to slow them up. And people might say, well, St Kilda are still possessing the ball, but what it's given is Darcy Cameron, the Pies ruckman, time to get back behind the footy. You want St Kilda to have to kick long down the line, and this is a win. Slowing them up. It's what the best teams do, and eventually kicks long down the line. And here is Darcy Cameron, who marks the footy. So that's what the Bombers, if their supporters should be at home looking for on the weekend, how can we slow up St Kilda? And it'll give them a chance. But I'm tipping the Saints in a tight one.
Yeah, I think the Saints as well, even though they're missing Max King.